If we go back to the summer of 1974, specifically July 24th, you find a Supreme Court that looked very different from today's, but facing a remarkably similar question. Richard Nixon was president. He was cornered, under investigation, and he had convinced himself of a legal theory he believed was bulletproof. Nixon thought the president existed above the law, absolute executive privilege. If he declared a tape private, it was private. If he marked a document secret, it was secret. No judge, no prosecutor, no Congress could touch him. Why did he feel safe? Because he had appointed 4 of the sitting justices. He assumed the court would protect him, a transaction. He gives them the job, they give him immunity. Richard Nixon was president. He was cornered, under investigation, and he had convinced himself of a legal theory he believed was bulletproof. Nixon thought the president existed above the law. Absolute executive privilege. If he declared a tape private, it was private. If he marked a document secret, it was secret. No judge, no prosecutor, no Congress could touch him. Why did he feel safe? Because he had appointed 4 of the sitting justices. He assumed the court would protect him, a transaction. He gives them the job, they give him immunity. But on that hot July morning in 1974, the Supreme Court handed down United States v. Nixon. And the vote? Not 5-4, not a nailbiter, unanimous, 8-0, including the men Nixon himself had put on the bench. The ruling was clear. The president is not a king. He must turn over the tapes. 16 days later, Nixon resigned. That's the moment the system worked. The judiciary realized that protecting the man would destroy the institution. Fast forward to today. Donald Trump has been betting everything, his life, his fortune, his freedom, on the hope that 1974 was a fluke. That this modern Supreme Court, the one he built with a 6-3 conservative supermajority, would operate differently. He gave them the power. Surely they would give him immunity. He was wrong. Today, quietly, without televised hearings or oral arguments, the Supreme Court delivered a devastating blow to Trump's legal strategy. Fatal. And I mean fatal. Not a political setback, not a bruise to his ego. I mean the strategy keeping him out of a prison cell is over. Here's what happened. The court refused to intervene. No stay, no delay. They told the lower courts, special counsel Jack Smith, and the American people, proceed. The calendar strategy is dead. Absolute immunity? Here's the kicker. No dissents, no furious Clarence Thomas, no mournful Alito defending executive power, no lifeline from Trump's own appointees, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Barrett. Silence. That silence speaks louder than any opinion. Even the justices Trump put on the bench refused to stretch the Constitution to protect him. They saw what the Nixon court saw 50 years ago. If you declare a president absolutely immune from criminal prosecution, you don't just save him, you dissolve the court itself. Above the law, the court is powerless, irrelevant. The justices chose themselves over Trump. That's a catastrophe for his legal team. Former federal prosecutors I spoke to today, all with experience in espionage and RICO cases, agree without immunity. Trump has no defense on the merits. What is he going to argue? That he didn't hide the documents? Security footage says otherwise. That he didn't pressure Georgia's Secretary of State? We have the audio. That he didn't incite the mob? We saw it on live television. The shield is gone. The strategy is dead. The trial is moving forward. The only defense Donald Trump had was this: you aren't allowed to prosecute me. That defense? Dead. And the timing couldn't be worse. Right as the primary season wraps, Trump pivots to the general election. He wanted 6 months of rallies, border speeches, economy speeches. Instead, he's tethered to a defendant's table in a freezing Washington, D.C. courtroom, listening to his former chief of staff, his former vice president, and his former White House counsel testify against him. The split screen is inevitable. Trump the candidate versus Trump the defendant. And his campaign? He doesn't control that narrative. Here's the deeper layer: Trump's psychology. For his entire life, he's believed that everything is transactional. Loyalty has a price. Appoint Barrett right before the 2020 election. Insurance. Back Kavanaugh through his brutal confirmation. A vote owed. Today proves he fundamentally misunderstood the Supreme Court. These justices are conservatives. They're overturning abortion rights, weakening environmental regulations, achieving the goals of the conservative legal movement. But they are not Trump employees. Lifetime tenure, no elections to run, no favors to owe. And today, they cut the cord. Trump likely can't process this. Look at Truth Social. The all-caps screaming about election interference and corrupt courts is frantic. Yet notice who he isn't attacking by name: the justices. Those are his legacy appointments. call them corrupt, and he admits he appointed corrupt people. He's trapped in his own logic loop. What happens next? First, the timeline accelerates. Judge Chutan in Washington, D.C. has said the public deserves a speedy trial. With the Supreme Court removing the stop sign, she'll put her foot on the gas. Jury selection by late summer. Verdict, possibly before Election Day. Second, the pressure on witnesses skyrockets. Aides, co-conspirators, anyone holding out, hoping for a delay or a pardon. Today's Supreme Court decision tells them, no rescue, no immunity. The incentive to cut a deal with Jack Smith just exploded. When the ship is sinking, the rush for lifeboats gets chaotic. Third, it changes the election. Never before has a major party candidate run for president while sitting through a criminal trial of this magnitude. How will suburban voters react? How will the media cycle play out? Trump's superpower, dominating the news, is about to be weaponized against him. He won't dominate with rallies, he'll dominate with court transcripts. Imagine the counterfactual. If the Supreme Court had granted a stay, delayed the case, he'd have gotten effective amnesty. Voters go to the polls in November without knowing if their candidate is a felon. But today, the court did the bare minimum, and in this environment, bare minimum feels heroic. They treated him like any other citizen. And Trump? That is his kryptonite. His entire persona, his brand, his business model, built on exceptionalism. Rules are for little people. Taxes are for little people. Jail is for little people. Today, the Supreme Court said, no, the rules apply to you too. This decision sends a message to the entire federal judiciary. Judge Eileen Cannon in Florida, dragging her feet with bizarre rulings favoring Trump? Warning shot. Don't get creative. We won't back you up. We are entering a volatile phase. Trump does not handle loss well. He does not handle rejection well. For 3 years, he controlled the pace, filing motion after motion, dictating the terms. Today, he lost the con. Jack Smith is driving the bus now, and he doesn't break for politics. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but grind exceedingly fine. Trump banked on the slow part. He forgot the fine part. No Supreme Court shield. The evidence matters. The facts matter. He is exposed before the law. Historians may look back at this unsigned Supreme Court order as the pivot point, the moment the fever broke. Not flashy, not a dramatic speech, just a denial. But that denial reshapes 2024, a trial, a verdict, the American people deciding based on truth, not delay tactics. Delay? Dead. Immunity? Dead. The trial of the century begins. And for the man who thought he owned the court, reality is finally settling in.